How much time we have? Did we get the name of a physician? A musician? We don't have a musician, or he doesn't have the name?
He has a musician, but he doesn't have the name.
Is it a male or female? You didn't even know that.
It's a group, he said.
It's a groupie. Okay.
Not so right.
Trio.
How would you describe not so right?
Anonymous trio.
Huh?
Oh, good. You can speak Spanish a little bit? Can you welcome the guests? Say welcome the Latino community, all New Orleans to your new restaurant. We would love that. We've been doing that with a lot of the new Spanish restaurants.
New Orleans Cafe Cubano.
Periodically, maybe you'll throw something in, as I say, but and then at the end, invite them all to come again. Now, dare I ask, how did we get Baloney and BROUSSARD as Cuban names? I know. No, so nobody's Cuban? Cajun Creole Cuban. I didn't know why the red beans. I thought y'all would just accommodate New Orleans taste.
No, we are New Orleans taste.
How much time? 10 seconds? Welcome back to Restaurant Review. I'm your host, Bob Bockelman, and we're glad to see you again. We're in we haven't even reached the official beginning of summer, but it really feels like August here in New Orleans. We have high temperature and high humidity. Thank goodness we get a little afternoon rainstorm that sometimes cools us off, sometimes bring even stronger heat. But we'll get through it. As long as we don't have a hurricane, New Orleans is fine. And we're fine and pleased to bring you today a new restaurant. As we mentioned, we're trying to do that. And this is good because we've been exploring a lot of the Latino community that's emerging. Even though we've had certainly a lot of representatives over the year, we really haven't gotten the food availability and variety. But now we're starting to see that, and we have a new restaurant for you on that. Unfortunately, musicians, we're still having a plight of trying to get live musicians in the studio. We have someone lined up, but it's 3-4 weeks away. So once again, we always ask you to go to the website revue.com and give us any names or bands or yourself to come on, because we'd love to have you on so New Orleans can see that we're growing still musically as well as back in the food business. Now, I'm going to go ahead and let our director, I understand we have a trio from the past, from the archives. I'm not sure what their name. I didn't get a chance to get that from the director. But let's take a listen, and we'll enjoy again and find out, I'm sure, during the song who they are. So we'll catch you on the other side of our opening musical guest. Well, that was the Anonymous Trio. I'm sure you recognize them. Unfortunately, I have a senior moment after 5 years and did not recognize the group. I'm hoping with maybe one of their other remaining songs before the end of the show that we might have a title on them so we can certainly give them a little credit. We do apologize for that. We got their song title, but not their name. Anyway, it was a lovely song, very melodic, kind of slow, but that's our slow doldrums of summer that we're in. But let's liven it up a little bit with a great guest and a great new restaurant. As we mentioned, the Latino community is coming alive. We've had several great new Latin restaurants on, Cafe Baru out in Kenna, and now they have their new one uptown, and then the Felipe's Mexican Taqueria. So we're really trying to bring you a sample every once in a while of what's out there and what's coming new to you. And today's is no exception. We have a great new Mid-City restaurant, which is perfect. You know, Mid-City is really resurgence back on Carrollton and other areas now. The homes are coming back. The restaurants are coming back, so then you know the people are going to be coming back are already there. And we're pleased to tell you about today's restaurant. It's called Cafe Cubano. And hopefully by that term, you know we have a little bit of the Cuban influence. There we go. And we're pleased to have one of the owners, and I think one of the major source of the recipes, and it's Ms. GERI BROUSSARD Baloney. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Great. Now, first of all, we need to tell the people, well, that really doesn't sound Cuban. So do we really have a Cuban restaurant here?
What we have is it's New Orleans Café Cubano. Y bienvenidos a Café Cubano de New Orleans. The New Orleans Café Cubano, it was my daughter's dream. And basically, and particularly after Katrina, she really, the family was really committed to doing something to participate in the recovery of our great city. Our family it's a very diverse family. Obviously, BROUSSARD, we're French, we're Spanish, and I'm born and raised here in New Orleans, my children as well, and our family part of our family is from Cuba. We speak Spanish fluently, and we have a very strong Latino connection. We actually have relatives in our family that are from Nicaragua, and so we are really a diverse family, but New Orleans based. And so New Orleans Café Cubano embodies Cuban. It's a double entendre. Café Cubano, as in Cuban coffee, right, and also means Cuban restaurant.
Restaurant, right.
And we also have dishes on the menu that we'll talk about later on that indicate the merging of the cultures, which are actually very similar, not very difficult to merge, because New Orleans has a very deep history in the Caribbean and in Latin America. Our cultures are very, very similar.
Oh, yeah. We're steeped with Central American Cuban.
Absolutely. And in the 7th Ward of New Orleans, where my kids grew up, a great number of the families in the 7th Ward actually have grandparents from the Caribbean, particularly Cuba in particular. So there's just, the cultures are so similar, the people are so similar, they look similar, so people tend to settle where they're comfortable. And in the 7th Ward, in the area of St. Bernard and Paris Avenue, at one time that area had a very, very heavy Cuban population there. We even used to have a grocery store, really, on the corner of Paris Avenue, Paris and St. Bernard Avenue.
Yes, yes.
And so it was a very large Cuban neighborhood, and those Cuban families, as they settled in, many of them intermarried with the New Orleans families, and then you have older people who have older roots in the Caribbean, dating back to the 1700s, 1800s, from the Dominican Republic and Cuba, with the sugarcane industry in Louisiana.
Right.
There was a lot of the bananas and so on. Exactly. So what we have done is infused our culture. And because, you know, post-Katrina, we're really very concerned that the true New Orleans culture would survive.
Exactly.
So you'll see dishes on the menu, red beans and rice. As it gets colder, you may see gumbo and a red bean soup.
Well, let's not jump into the food yet, because we really want to show some pictures and talk.
Beautiful.
But I think you've done an eloquent job of saying why you're here, and we're so glad because, you know, we want to explore every ethnicity of New Orleans, and we've always done that, where some of the other shows focus strictly on the fine dining, the French or the Italian, and really don't go beyond, you know, those ethnicities. So I think our goal is to, as we always said, is to bring you the newest restaurants of of all nationalities, and because we are a gumbo, we are just like Chicago, and we are a melting pot, an infusion of so many cultures. Okay, now let's give him the address. It's
424 South Broad Street.
South Broad. It's not even a full block off of Broad, so it's easy to find. Right across from the
Israel Augustine School. It's not open now, right?
Beautiful old Spanish architecture school. Unfortunately, not reopened.
Right.
And how did you decide to locate? You just wanted to get mid-city because you knew it was coming back strong?
It looked like an area that had a lot of potential for more rapid recovery, so we thought that would be a great, a great place to locate the restaurant.
Now, what's unusual about the restaurant is when you first see it, it's actually in typical New Orleans style arts and crafts, two-story structure with the lower basement and the staircases going up, which is occupied by a law office. Downstairs, the entire basement has been redone to Cafe Cubano. You can see the beautiful French doors leading into the dining room, magnificent paintings and vibrant colors that really signify the Caribbean and that influence. So it's really fun, done really well with regard to simple, but still very, very cool, very, very slick, and really appetizing. Now, it's not, of course, a real huge restaurant. I think there's maybe 2 dining rooms, another room that's used for special events, but also, I guess, can be used for overflow.
Yes.
About how many people would you think you could accommodate?
25 to 30.
25 to 30, okay. And right now you're doing breakfast and lunch with the heavy emphasis on lunch, but I understand in the long term, because I've been pleading with you, is to try and stretch that afternoon into early evening, because so many people coming home is looking for an early, especially now we've kind of changed our ways and go to early dinner because so many restaurants close so early.
Right.
Plus, a lot of people would be interested in picking up something to go, taking it home. So hopefully it won't be too much longer when you'll also feature the early evening. That'll be great. Let's see if and the hours. Let's talk about hours of operation right now.
Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m.
Okay. Yes. So it's a weekday only restaurant, folks. But like I say, I think once you see it, and once they see its evolution, they're going to evolve, and I think we'll see a little bit maybe expansion of those days or times. And just be on notice and check them before you come, in case you think they might not be open when you come. The key here is you're going to love some of the flavors. Some of the food you're going to recognize. We mentioned some of our standard New Orleans food. Some of the others you may not recognize or have heard of or have tried in a different nationality, maybe a Central American versus. So I think you're going to really have a new taste treat. And it's doing great business early on, which is important. And what we want to do now is probably go ahead and start showing you some of the food and talking about it. We always start with appetizers, and we brought one to you, and Miss GERI has brought a show and tell. This is great. Tostones, is that correct?
Tostones,
Tostones,
yes.
Let's see if we get that picture up for you, and then we're going to show. There you go. Tostones are basically a fried and salted plantain, which is, and we're going to show you what a plantain is, and done in beautiful shapes. One we showed, she's brought kindly 2 different bananas, plantains, and which one is which one for the folks?
Well, they're both plantains. This is a tostón. It's like a green plantain, not as ripe as the maduro, which is my favorite. Both are fried and served either as an appetizer or as a side dish.
Right. We're going to see the maduros a little later accompanying one of the entrees. But the green, so you know how we have fried green tomatoes here in New Orleans?
We
it's
have
a
fried
similar
green
concept.
plantains.
Right, fried green plantains. There you go. Now you'll notice that the riper, the maduro, is much sweeter, so that's why it's more of a vegetable, more even almost bordering on dessert. Whereas this one, the green one, not as ripened, won't have as much sweetness, and therefore salt is used to really bring out those flavors. But it's really a great taste treat. It's fun for the kids. Like I said, it's beautifully cut into donut-size, scallop-looking pictures. So it's a fun little way to beginning. Okay, they are talking about some other things, but right now this is the primary appetizer. Let's take a look now. One of the things that's famous in Latin America are their soups. It couldn't be a Cuban restaurant if it did not have black bean soup. And I'm telling you, folks, let's take a look at this dish. It's one of the best I've had in a long time. Why don't you tell us, without giving away your secrets, about your black bean soup?
It's pretty similar to where you would prepare red bean soup. And the black bean is a very, very healthy bean. It's very, very high in proteins. But of course, you know, we use a lot of seasoning, onions, garlic, bell pepper, and the like. And you cook it like you cook any other bean.
And the cheese is on time, and that cheese on time?
Yes, that's a little cheese on top, just sprinkled on top after. It just gives it a nice flavor just to cap it off.
Now, the only thing, and so I thought it was very, very authentic. The only thing else that I've seen, and I've tried once before down in South Miami, was that they also added boiled egg to it. Do you ever?
I have seen it with boiled eggs, and occasionally I've seen an older relative add a boiled egg if she had too much salt in it after she tasted it, and that boiled egg kind of absorbed the salt.
Absorb some of that.
Yeah.
I see. Well, maybe that's the
maybe
reason.
they had too much
but
salt in it.
But I have to admit, I enjoyed the egg in it, so it was nice. But it's only been in the Cuban area because I've seen some of the other Central American black beans, and none of them have egg in it. But maybe it was a compensatory element that I wasn't even aware of.
Absolutely, and the Cuban black bean is demonstrative of the similarities in the cooking styles from New Orleans and the Caribbean, as opposed to the Central American black bean, which might be a drier bean. The black bean is prepared virtually the same way you would prepare red beans. We even put andouille sausage in our beans sometimes, so that gives it a good flavor.
Yeah, so that is
absolutely
very much.
Yes.
Now I know you also do occasionally. I didn't get a chance to try, but one of my favorite lentils. Is that right?
Yes, lentils.
And I don't know if people have tried lentils. So in fact, probably the largest locally exponent of lentils is the Mediterranean, the Arab kind of, the Greek kind of restaurants. They will have it, and I'm not sure if a lot of the locals try that because I guess they find it's kind of suspicious, you know. But I think if you do like lentils as a dish in any way, you'll love the soup as well. Now, again, I'm not sure if it's certain days or whatever, but you know, if you want to try, just certainly ask one of the waitresses or someone there with regard to when would they have lentil soup if you want to try that. Now, they do have. And I have to admit, we really are remiss in some of our photos, and I do apologize for that this week. They do have a group of salads, and we don't have any pictures, but let's talk about it. Now, again, I didn't see anything that was uniquely Spanish or Cuban, but maybe I'm wrong there. And I know you had a house salad. Is that right? Let's talk a little bit about the salads that you have. I believe you have a house, and
I think it's fair to say that the salads are not uniquely Cuban.
Okay.
We have an Italian salad. We have what we call a mixta, which is basically a lettuce, tomato, asparagus, beets, and avocado in the salad.
You got the beets and avocado.
Yes, beets and avocado. That gives it that twist. And then my favorite is the grilled chicken salad. It's basically
these are entree salads.
Entree salads, actually. You can exactly, and it's just wonderful with really fresh grilled chicken breasts on the top.
Do you do the beets in all of them, or just in the mixed up?
Just in the mixed up.
And is it the red beet or the golden beet?
It's the red beet.
Red beet.
Yes,
excellent.
yes.
Well, I need to try that next time. Even though I get some of the other food, I forget about the salads. But I love the beet in the salad. Okay, so again, we apologize. You'll see some of the little standard house salads that accompany the entrees. But as she mentioned, they're delicious, fresh, and great flavorful, but not really extraordinary with regard to a lot of other ingredients other than the mixture. Okay, now I think we need to start looking at some of the appetizers, some of the entrees. Now, what we do here is a different plate lunch every day, which is very similar to New Orleans. But of course, a lot of these are specializing in the Cuban and the Spanish versus the New Orleans. They also do sandwiches, but again, leaning toward the Cuban and the international sandwich. So we've got pictures of most of these, or at least 3 or 4 different ones to show you so you can get an idea. As you mentioned, Mondays is Red Beans Day. Now, I skipped that because, not that I don't think it's some worthwhile, but I really wanted to focus on some of the other dishes that are truly more uniquely or for our identification, something you don't see at another restaurant. So I think the first one we have is, I believe it's Tuesday, so hopefully you'll correct me, and that is called Ropa Vieja, or maybe it's a special. I'm not sure what day it's.
It's a special, Ropa Vieja, which is basically a ripped pork.
Yeah, I call it pulled pork, same concept,
pulled pork with a lot of onions and garlic kind of shredded and sauteed together. It has a wonderful wonderful
Tremendous flavor and
Absolutely.
very, very tender, because some people don't eat pork, but I'm telling you, if you do, and really I think some of the best pork comes out of a Spanish tradition. I really do. I think French and all do it and some of the other, but if you really want to bring out the true flavor of pork, I think the Spanish have really nailed it. And as you notice with that, I believe there was maybe the director bring that picture back up. I believe that's an order of the Maduros fried. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
That
and
looks like Maduros, yes.
And then some black beans. Is that right over right?
That's,
Now, one
beans
thing
on
I'm not
rice.
sure of is, are these, I've always heard the term congri, and I was always of the opinion that black beans over rice is congri, but that might not be true.
And it varies from location to locations. You'll find that congri is a traditional dish in many places, including in South Louisiana, and it's a rice with sprinkles of black beans in it. You'll find that also throughout Central, South America, and the Caribbean. But I think what distinguishes it from when we serve black beans and rice, we serve black beans and rice more the way a New Orleanian would serve red beans and rice, with the beans, with a lot of kind of saucy beans over the rice, as opposed to the beans being cooked in sprinkled in the rice.
Because that would make sense. Most of the time when it really has been labeled as congri.
Congri is beans in your rice.
Right.
As opposed to beans over your rice.
Well, and as you mentioned, and not only cooked, you won't see, for the most part, you won't see a whole bean. You'll see halves or segments in it, and therefore what happens, the white rice really loses its color, not flavor, becomes more of a grayish color. So it is different. But again, flavor-wise, it's pretty much the same.
Yes,
at the same time, I think you'll like this better because you'll equate it more for those who haven't tried black beans. Certainly you want to try it because you're going to see how, especially how it's prepared here, how close it is to the red bean, but with a different flavor. So I think this would be the one. If you've been skeptical to ever try black beans, try it here on the rice, because I think you can, with the different ingredients, the French, the chorizo, and Spanish sausage, you're going to see the flavors are really going to come out, and because the way they're prepared is very close to our home cooking. Okay, that was the ropa vieja. That is the pulled pork. The next one we have is a very, very famous one. That's called arroz con pollo, or I would say rice with chicken.
Yes.
So let's take a look at that, and then tell us. Look how beautiful color. Tell us a little bit about this, please.
I guess you're probably going to say all the dishes are her favorite dishes, because that's also one of my favorite dishes.
Okay.
And it's a yellow rice.
Saffron. It's saffron, I imagine, right? Saffron rice.
With saffron and a lot of garlic, and it's traditional, typical Creole seasons that we use to season our rices with, and it's cooked with the chicken, and it's absolutely delicious. It's very. Yeah.
I mentioned, and here's something where I mentioned to your daughter that Americans, some Americans love all types. Chicken, of course, is known around the world, but for some reason Americans seem to specialize in the white meat, in the breast, etc. So what I told her, and even though what I've seen that this dish is predominantly served with the dark meat for the flavor, because for those who really know the difference, the dark meat is really more flavorful than the white meat. But I made a minor suggestion that maybe we would have considered to put some white meat in as a little option for those who strictly would serve it with a chicken breast or something. Again, that's for their consideration. But even if you don't eat the chicken, the flavor of the chicken is in there, and it is absolutely delicious. You saw it was served with a lovely little fresh, crisp house salad, and I think some hot French bread, which I was once again surprised, but still crisp beignets with, beignets with a lovely, lovely butter taste. Again, a good one. But my all-time favorite is what's coming up next, and that is paella. Paella, for those who don't know, again, is usually a saffron rice, but mixed with some places seafood only, some places a combination of seafood and meats. But the more traditional is seafood and meats, and with some vegetables. So when you're talking about a color explosion and a flavor explosion, this is really like, I don't want to say the ultimate, but certainly maybe like our jambalaya. I guess that's the closest thing the French can equate to it, but totally different in taste. So let's take a look at the jambalaya dish, and you'll see it's a little bit similar to the arroz con pollo, because again you've got that saffron color in there. But tell us what's all inside that big ball of paella rice, please.
It really is more akin to a jambalaya, except that your rice is heavily flavored with saffron. You have mussels, shrimp, clams, crabs. Sometimes we'll have lobsters in the dish. It's just a really beautiful medley of seafood. This is really a very Spanish dish.
Yes.
And so we bring this dish, and I think it's really palatable to the New Orleans, Louisiana.
It's a very easy change, if you want, for someone who's never tried it. So it's not like something so scary that and that's what we like. That's why we love this show, to do the ethnic restaurants as well, so we can get our natives exposed to it. Because of course, we all get particular restaurants, particular cuisines that we favor more than like, but we really need to be more adventurous, especially in a city. There's so many cities don't even have half of the cultures that we have. Mm-hmm. So to be able to explore that and try and find which ones you like, what ingredients you like, and which ones really are indigenous or native to that particular ethnic group. So that's what's really good about New Orleans, is that you've got to be a little adventurous. And because this restaurant has some New Orleans dishes or some crossovers that are very similar, you can go there without being afraid that it's, I'm going to waste my money, that I'm not going to like anything. You're going to have things that if you really got to go standard, you can, or you can try here. And I think for those jambalaya lovers like myself, you're going to love this because of the seafoods and the mixture of the meats in it. And again, it comes with a lovely salad and an accompaniment from there. Okay, now and I believe we didn't say what days the arroz con pollo, I believe, is a Wednesday. Friday is paella. What's on Thursday?
Thursday is lechon asado.
Lechon.
Con frijoles
tell the people
negros.
what lechon asado means in English, please.
It's I won't say grilled, roasted pork.
Roasted pork.
It's a roasted pork.
And how does that differ? So they won't say, well, that sounds like the same as the pulled pork.
No, it's more like when we fix a pot roast.
Pot roast, right?
Yeah, but it's a lot of garlic,
sliced,
and
not
it's sliced really neat, very crispy. It is absolutely out of sight. It is to die for. Wonderful flavors.
Okay. Are there any others that you maybe feature as a special as opposed to a weekday situation?
Yes, we have a crawfish jambalaya that we occasionally do. That's a special dish that we occasionally bring in.
Okay.
And it has phenomenal taste. It's almost as much crawfish as rice.
Wow.
Rice when we do it, and again, it's it's not really a yellow rice. It's more of a yellow red because you have the cayenne peppers, and you also have the tomato sauce that you incorporate.
Now, would you do that on a Friday only, or
we'll do it generally on a Friday? Yes.
So there, if you want to try, give them a call, and that way you can check to see, if they are doing it, when it would be available. So that would be a great, nice, certainly even closer to New Orleans.
Absolutely.
Okay, now let's take a look at some of the sandwiches, because here's where we really shine in our things that, for the most part, unique to their culture, as opposed to, we have a couple others standard poor boys. But the first one, the most well known, it's served at a lot of restaurants that aren't even Spanish, is the Cuban sandwich. Now, what I know about a Cuban sandwich is the most important thing is that the bread is slightly different than the French bread that we know. The sandwich is always served hot or toasted. The actual ingredients in the bread are pressed down or grilled, so it's pressed down, and so the heat infuses all the way through the bread, not just the bread being crispy. And usually there's maybe ham or some kind of cheese or pork. But let's talk about your Cuban sandwich exactly, and we got it up there. We've got two pictures of one closed that we were looking at just now, and I think we have an open one so you can see the ingredients on the inside. Tell us about your Cuban sandwich first.
I think we have one of the most authentic Cuban sandwiches that you're going to find in the New Orleans area. It's made with very fresh pork and ham and the Swiss, it's a Swiss cheese that's pressed on the sandwich press, and it is just it's to die for. It's really delicious. Yeah, well, definitely, like I say, the idea of, and again, it's the pro and con of the muffaletta. Some people say,